All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here with me this afternoon. It's a little chilly out today. Hopefully everybody's staying warm. My name is Odette Falone, for those of you that don't know me. And I am Inspired Instructions content specialist. So I'm here today to talk to you about social emotional learning and academic instruction, the keys to infusing SEL into what you already teach. So as a consultant in the field, I've heard a lot of concern from teachers regarding SEL and feeling overwhelmed by the idea of having to add one more item to their already very lengthy to-do list. And I totally understand this. I know this is definitely a concern that a lot of us are having. But today I hope to be able to share some strategies with you that can help teachers infuse SEL into their practice and make it feel more like part of the content that they are teaching and less of an addition. Okay, so we'll go through some of the research quickly today as to why social emotional learning is so important. And you'll see that there really is a very big benefit for students as well as teachers with incorporating it into our lessons daily in terms of culture and climate, building relationships with your students and classroom management. There's really just an infinite amount of benefit that we can gain from implementing this. All right, so as we go through, please feel free if you have any questions or there's something that you'd like me to stop and repeat to just shout it out or throw a question in the chat. I'm going to be checking that often to make sure that there's any questions that might need to get answered. All right, so our agenda for this afternoon includes these 4 parts. So we're going to start just by talking about the what and the why of SEL. As I said, just a quick introduction of some research, what is it, why are we going to, why are we discussing its importance so much, and why should we infuse it into our learning? And after that, we'll talk about how we can create lesson plans with SEL in mind. So rather than trying to add social emotional learning into the lesson plans that we've already created, we'll talk about how we can take a step back and really implement that into the lesson plan creation process. Then we'll talk about building your own SEL practice, as it's been really research has shown us that teachers that practice social emotional learning themselves and have a good understanding of it are that much better at implementing that, into their students' learning as well. And finally, we'll talk about planning for continued growth. So, as teachers, we are lifelong learners. It's something that we promote to our students, and it's something that we should be ourselves as well. So it's always important, no matter the career path that you're on, to reflect on the process that you're doing to always become a little bit better, each and every day. All right. So everyone, okay, can hear me, see me? All right. I just saw there was a comment in the chat. I just want to make sure we're all good. All right, wonderful. All right, so the what and the why of SEL. As I said, just a quick review of some of the research, what is social emotional learning and why are we focusing on its importance today? Okay, so let's start by talking about the CASEL framework. For those of you that aren't familiar with CASEL, it's the Collaborative of Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And it really gives us a lot of wonderful resources and research based on social emotional learning with a lot of great references for us to utilize in our classrooms. It helps make those evidence-based social emotional learning. It helps make it an integral part of education from preschool all the way to high school. All right, so just starting to go through with that. I apologize if I'm breaking up a little bit. Seems like there's some issues with that. Hopefully my internet connection stabilizes a little bit. I apologize. All right, so as I mentioned, the CASEL framework shows us here these 5 competencies that we're going to be focusing on this afternoon: self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. So as we said, SEL is this process that adults and young people can both acquire, where we develop healthy identities, manage our emotions, we achieve personal and collective goals, we feel empathy and show empathy for others, establishing those great relationships and making responsible and caring decisions. These are all things that we need in the classroom and beyond, as adults in our careers and moving forward. So, and also all things that I'm sure we all hope for our own children as well. So it is such a big part of our students' lives. And many of these things, really did take a hit during the pandemic, as students were not, exposed to their classmates as frequently. There wasn't as many opportunities. There weren't as many opportunities for students to be able to engage in some of these learning skills. So we really need to tap into them as much as we can now to develop them and re-strengthen some of what students were working towards previously. Okay. So as I mentioned before, many teachers feel that they're being asked to make a choice between strengthening SEL skills and growing their academic skills in their students. This is absolutely not the case, not something that's true. The skills that students need to learn with social emotional are really the skills that students need to learn are really the skills that SEL provides, right? Things like reflection, perseverance, focus. These are all things that we are, trying to instill in our students on a daily basis. The question really isn't whether or not we should teach social emotional learning, it's how to do it. So that's really the tricky part. That's what we're going to be focusing on today, how we can integrate it into our lesson plans, into our daily instruction, rather than including it as an addition. Because I know we're already swamped with so many academic goals that we have on a daily basis. And these pieces can really help us achieve those goals through integration. Something definitely to keep in mind. Okay, so just a quick tidbit here about what the research says. So, through years of studies, hundreds of thousands of students that have been studied, science has linked SEL to many student gains, just a few summarized here. Obviously, improved social emotional skills, which those 5 competencies that we mentioned earlier all rose with the explicit instruction, but also, and very importantly, an improved attitude about themselves, about others, and about school. SEL has shown positive classroom behavior to be an improvement, as well as an 11 percentile point gain on standardized achievement tests. So if we're thinking of SEL as something separate than academic, we really can see here that the two, work hand in hand. And you'll notice as we go through some of the resources and strategies I'm going to share with you today, that a lot of these activities can definitely help improve and put positive gains in our academic learning as well. On the other side, we see a reduced risk for failure. So the research shows us that students that are engaged in social emotional learning activities, there's less conduct problems, less emotional distress. So, all positives in my opinion, for things that we're seeing in terms of, the research for SEL. Okay. All right, so creating lesson plans with SEL in mind. This is the meat of our webinar today. We're going to be really going through lots of great resources, and I hope to be able to share with you some fun new ideas and ways that we can incorporate some new activities into our lesson plans, moving forward. Everything that you hear from me today and everything that you see in terms of resources will all be available to you. I'm happy to share them. All you need to do at the end of our webinar today is just to let me know that you would like to receive the resources in the evaluation form that you receive at the end. Okay, let's see. I'm seeing that I am having some Wi-Fi issues. I really apologize for that. All right, let's continue. All right, so a quote we have here that I love. Teachers are at their core designers. and we design one of the most important things in the world, learning experiences. So again, I just love this quote because it couldn't be more true. Teachers wear so many hats. We are obviously educators. We are sometimes counselors and nurses, so many different things. But we are absolutely designers of learning experiences as well. And when we create our lesson plans, we should think of ourselves as such. We should, really take this seriously. It's not a task and a to-do list that should be taken lightly. And it's really vital to plan with SEL in mind. That's the way that you're going to be able to integrate it into your lessons the best way. Okay. All right, so I have some signature SEL practices that I'd like to share with you today. And these three were developed by CASEL, the company we discussed a little bit earlier. There's some wonderful strategies and resources that I'm going to share for each of these three signature practices. And of course, they follow the guidelines of what a lesson plan should include. So these are pieces that you could plug in to the beginning, middle, and end of your lessons to intertwine some social emotional learning practices within. Okay, so and as I go through each of these, we will dive further, deeper into them. And again, as I said, share some resources with you in terms of, what these entail. So the first practice is welcoming rituals. So just like morning meetings or interactive do nows, something that's going to build community and really set the stage for the learning that's about to take place. Really anything that can open up students' voices, bring students' voices to the front of the room, whatever you can do to get students talking at the beginning of class really will help them stay more engaged throughout the day. So as I said, this is a great place to start. I'm going to share a few resources with you in a moment, but this is one practice that you can start to incorporate in your lesson plans, right at the start. Secondly is engaging strategies. So things I'm sure many of us are familiar with, turn and talk to your partner, Socratic seminar or jigsaw. These are all things that we're doing with our students to engage them in the content that they're learning. And we can infuse them with SEL. So anything that you're using that supports learning individually and collectively can be considered an engaging practice. And we'll share a few examples in a moment. And the third piece here is optimistic closures. So I know the word optimistic makes you think, oh, this is some kind of cheery way to end the lesson. It's not necessarily just a positive way to close a class. It could include a reflection, sharing a next step, some way of expressing gratitude, or even lifting up a new understanding that students have discovered during your lesson. Okay, so as I said, we'll share a few examples of each of these three, and any resources that I share with you now can be available to you if you just let me know in your evaluation sheet at the end. So do we have any questions so far in terms of, our research and the three practices for SEL? Okay. All right. So as I said, I'm going to share some resources here, some great tips and tricks and strategies to get you through and get you started in terms of infusing SEL into your lesson plans. So we talked a little bit about welcoming routines and rituals. And really, again, what this is just any well-taught system of actions, a series of tasks that you have for your students at the beginning of a lesson or the beginning of a day. So for elementary students, it might be a list of directions near the door, explaining something that they need to do when they walk in. For secondary students, maybe a do now of some kind that spells out your expectations. Something that students are seeing each and every day, a routine, something that is consistent and gives them that what your expectations are, and they can see at a glance how they are to be getting engaged. That's something that you can consider as welcoming ritual and routine. The first example here is simply just.
Hi. Can you please fill it regular? Yes. Thank you.
Sorry, if you don't mind just muting your microphone just for me, if you don't mind. All right, so the first of the three is to greet every student at the door. As I said, simple, it sounds simple enough, and it's probably something you've heard before, but really this is such an important practice in terms of building student relationships and allowing them to know that you are appreciative, that they are there that day, and that you see them. So I know it can be hard sometimes, you're frazzled at your desk, you're trying to get things together, but this is definitely something that teachers should make every effort they can to do. The picture that you see on this slide is a teacher who took it to even an extra personalized level. I saw this teacher on the news actually, and he created a unique handshake for every student that he had. Amazing. I was like tearing up just watching how joyful the students were coming in and how excited they were to do their handshake with their teacher each and every day. Now, again, that is not something that I could probably do because it does take a lot to memorize, but I commend him for that. But even just a simple handshake or greeting. I've even seen some teachers post, outside their classroom door, different images of different kinds of greetings, like a fist bump or a high five or a handshake or a salute. And as students enter the classroom, younger ones usually, they tap the symbol that represents how they'd like to be greeted that day. And it just gives that little extra piece for students as they're walking in the door, a routine that is welcoming and, provides them with, that welcoming entrance to their classroom. All right. So the second piece here is morning meeting. So as I said, something that you introduce every day, and this could be, simple as a journal entry, a do now, it could be a question. I'm going to share with you a link here that provides went forward, questions that encourage positive communication. So this is something that I organize it in a fun way with a different theme for each day. But you could hang a poster every Monday that says Motivational Monday and choose one of these prompts that ask them about something motivating. And students can write on a Post-it note their response and stick it up there. And then you can kind of review to start the day with a conversation of, the theme of Motivational Monday. I have some questions here for Tuesday, things that, students would choose. Wellness Wednesday, there's some questions that ask them to tap into their feelings a little bit, what causes them stress, what's challenging for them, things like that. And those are great places for you to learn about your students too. So while you might not feel this is, a math problem of the day, these kinds of questions can really help you tap into where you might need to spend some extra focus if you see that students are sharing similar feelings of challenge, in terms of the content that you're teaching. Some questions here for Thoughtful Thursday, thinking of people that were thoughtful in their actions or that they're appreciative of. And Friday, ending the day on a celebratory note, what was their favorite part of the week? What are you excited for? Just something that students can really think about themselves for a moment. And this, again, is just sample questions that you could include in your morning meeting or morning conversation. So again, that resource is available for you. I'm happy to share that with you at the end of our webinar. A third piece here is an interactive do now. So what do I mean by interactive? Really something that students are getting up, moving, and interacting with the content a little bit. So one example here is this 4 corners activity. So this could be something that you have set up before students walk in the door. You could label each corner with a different feeling. We have overwhelmed, stressed, joyous, relieved. And as students enter the room, you prompt them to please head over to a corner that they feel fits them best for that day. And these are samples, but you can change them to any emotions you like. You could change them even to multiple choices of a question that you ask at a problem of the day and have students move to the corner that represents the answer that they feel is correct. Then you have students converse in that corner and talk about why they feel that way or why they feel that answer. In fact, there's lots of different ways you can modify this four corners activity. But again, it just is a motivating way to get students up, moving, and thinking about a particular question. So you might do this feelings four corners do now on the day of a test and see if you feel that if many students feel overwhelmed or stressed by the content that they're about to be tested on, or they feel confident and ready to go. Another piece here for the interactive do now that I love is synectics. And what that is really just bringing images into some type of comparison to the content that you're teaching. So for example, you might project an image on your screen or print out and put images on students' desks. And then you're going to ask them to complete this sentence stem where they would say, okay, the topic that you're teaching that day, whatever the content is of your subject area, this topic is like this image because. So they're thinking outside the box and really having to look at the little details of the image that you choose and decide how the content that they're learning connects with the image that you're showing them. So just a different way to kind of start your class or start your content area. And all of these pieces tap into students' social emotional skills. So if you're saying to yourself, I greet every student at the door and, I do morning meetings, these are things that you may not realize you're already doing to tap in. And maybe you can start to incorporate more of an SEL component by talking about some of their feelings and those four corner do nows periodically, doesn't need to be every day. But engaging that some of those competencies that we mentioned earlier. Any questions on those welcoming rituals and routines? Okay, wonderful. Hopefully my screen or my internet is is doing a little bit better. I apologize that there were some issues before. Okay, so moving on to engaging strategies, the second of those three practices that we mentioned. So engaging strategies, these are obviously inherently infused with SEL. They vary in complexity. They can include reflection time, processing time. There can be several steps or just one. There's a lot that can be involved in engaging strategies. But these are pieces that we're looking at bringing to a student-centered type of instruction and bringing student voices out when possible, having students engage with each other and build relationship skills and things like that. So some examples that I have here that are nice and easy to implement and infuse in our lessons are think, pair, share with a twist. I'm sure many of us are familiar with think, pair, share, where we have students, you ask a question and you have students think about it, pair with a friend, share their thoughts. The twist part of that is my favorite piece because the twist is where you have students share and then share with the class or volunteer to share their partner's thoughts or ideas or responses on the topic. So this I find really it encourages active listening because partners are having to remember what their friend is saying in order to reiterate if they'd like to volunteer to the class. But it really does get a lot more participation going. For some reason, students are much more eager to share what their classmates have said than what their own thoughts are. So I do find that twist here and there, adding that in, gets conversations, discussions going a little bit more than a typical think, pair, share might, where you just ask for students to volunteer their own ideas. The active listening piece is such an important skill that adults need to fine tune a lot of times as well. So it's important for students to be able to practice that as well. All right, so Clock Buddies is a quick and easy way for you to create partners or pairs in your classroom without having to, spend any time selecting or pulling popsicle sticks or allowing students to decide on their own. If you haven't heard of this resource again is available for you. I'm going to share what it looks like here. And it really is as simple as it sounds. One time only, you need students to get up out of their seat, write their name on this clock, and they walk around the room and find partners for each number of the clock. So let's say I meet up with my friend Michelle, and I say, okay, let's be 1:00 buddies. So I would write Michelle's name on 1:00, and she would write my name, Odette, on 1:00, and then I would go around the room and find somebody else for 2:00, 3:00, 4:00, and so on, until everybody has a full clock. Now, this piece of paper can be kept in a folder or, in students' desks at all times. And then, when you need students to work together and you're tired of asking them to work with just their elbow buddy or whoever's next to them, you could say, okay, 10:00 partners, go. And everybody in the room goes to who they have at 10:00. Okay, so it's, again, just a great way to encourage relationship building. And it has students interacting with students that they might not typically do that with. And it takes away a lot of time spent that you might use creating partners. So a great way to have conversations, even if it's just for a think, pair, share with a twist, you could quickly have clock buddies go on and move forward with that. All right. So the third one there is take a stand. See this one here. Okay. So with take a stand, again, it's just a way to get students up out of their seats and engaged in the content or the question or prompt that you're asking them. So you might propose an agree or disagree type question and have students stand up if they agree and stay seated if they disagree. You might want to have, one side of your room be the agree side and the other side disagree, or what have you, but you have students move their bodies to get to where they want to be, to show you. It takes it that little step further than just raising their hand. And then you have volunteers from, okay, my standing students, someone share with me X, and my sitting students share with me Y, you stay seated. So let's take a stand. Fishbowl is a fun one where you have students divided into two groups that are seated in concentric circles. So essentially that outside group is watching the fishbowl on the inside, and the outside circle listens to the inside group have a discussion on a topic. There's no talking aloud on the outside circle. It's fully listening, actively engaged listening into that center circle, having their discussion. And then the group switch places, so the listeners become speakers. Okay. So this really strengthens listening skills. It encourages everyone to participate in their own turn. And it builds so many different social emotional learning skills, social awareness, self-awareness, self-management, and self-discipline. So there's a lot going on in that type of activity. And it really allows students to become engaged on each other, student-centered all the way. The last piece here is very simple to create. It can be simply just a plain piece of paper folded into 6 sections, or you can print something out like you see here on my screen. But essentially, it's you can ask a thought-provoking question or ask students to consider their takeaways from the content that you just learned, or maybe interpret a quote that you post on the board. Really, the idea or the content part is up to you. But the students would respond their own way in the top left-hand corner, the first box of this pass it on sheet. And then they fold it up and pass it on to someone next to them. And the student there would have to look at what was already written and write something different in response to the question or topic or prompt that you give. So by the end of passing it 6 times, the original student gets back that sheet and is able to kind of see a nice array of takeaways, or maybe even summary of, things that were learned in the lesson, by being able to see their own, and then as well 5 others responses to the same question in a different way. So the key with that is making sure that students do not write the same thing that they're seeing in that first box. They have to read it and say, oh, that was what I was going to say. I have to think of something new. Okay, so they have to really be very thoughtful in their responses. Any questions on engaging strategies before I move on? All right, wonderful. Hopefully, again, All of these resources that you see today are available for you. If you just let me know in your evaluation sheet at the end, I am happy to send you each and every one PDF. You'll be able to use it tomorrow if you choose. Okay, so optimistic closure. So as I said earlier, optimistic closure does not necessarily mean we're just looking for a cheery ending to our class. It can definitely be a cheery ending, but it's not the only meaning of this word. It's really where we want to close the experience, close the lesson in an intentional way. And we can highlight, pieces of understanding that students had, the importance of their work. We can talk about forward thinking, maybe give students a sense of accomplishment after completing a lesson. There's a lot that could go on here. And I'm going to share some examples of some great resources that you can use. And, as I said, infuse them right into your lesson. They work for any content area, whether you teach phys ed, health, if you're teaching art, science, math, any content area can use these strategies that we've been talking about today, starting with our openings to our optimistic closures. So the first activity is called Suit Up. This one will require you to have a deck of cards on hand, something that you can pick up at the dollar store, maybe something that you already have at home. But the intention of this would be to close. It's a quick 5-minute activity. You would close out your lesson. Great way to encourage students to reflect a little bit, to think about their takeaways from a lesson. And as you see in that description there, where it's tapping into responsible decision making and social awareness as they're completing this activity. So what you would do is randomly hand out cards to each student, 1 card per student. You can post this this page here up on your board if you'd like to project that as your Suit Up card key, or you can print out one of each of these pages that are below it and hang them up on a bulletin board or hang them up on your board for whenever you choose to use it. But at the end of your lesson, you would have students take a look at their card and say, okay, if they received a card with a heart on it, they're having to think of something from the heart. So how did this lesson make them feel? What did it mean to you? If you're reading, let's say, a particular literary text, how did it make you feel? What did it mean to you? If you're learning about climate change, how did you feel after reading this? What did it mean to you? And they could jot that down on a Post-it or a journal, or even just simply think of the response in their mind and share out however you choose to do it. But really, this just gives them different ways to respond to the same content area. If they received a diamond, diamonds are gems that last forever, right? So what are some gems of wisdom gathered from people or content in this lesson? Okay, so they're thinking of some gems of wisdom that they earned or that they gleaned from this lesson. Clubs, which look like clovers, things that grew. So we're thinking about new ideas, new thoughts, or a new point of view that was encountered during the engagement today. And finally, spades. We see spades are used to dig in the garden. So we're thinking about new ideas that were planted or things that students dug up during class. Okay, so what's great about this closure activity is that students are really seeing that each individual person can have different takeaways from the same experience. So there's different ways here that you can debrief after students have been given their cards. You can ask them to turn and talk, share with a neighbor, or one person from each suit stands up and shares their response. It's really up to you how you choose to debrief, but it gives students a chance to have something different, a different way to respond that will tap into their social emotional learning skills. A second resource here is called Future Me, and I love this resource. It's not created by us. It's a website I'm sharing with you, futureme.org. And it's a fantastic way to close a lesson. Again, doesn't have to be something that you use every day, but it's a website that allows you to write a letter to your future self whether it be 6 months, a year, or you can choose a date. If you would like it just to be 1 week from now, you can. Students type in their letter and their email address, and this website will automatically send it to themselves in the future. So, things that you can use this website for, you might say, okay, what have you learned today that you plan to apply in the year ahead? And you might have them respond and send it to themselves in a year. Or you might say, what do you want to remember from today's lesson? Or what message of encouragement do you want to send yourself? Or what reminders about how you're feeling right now do you want to capture and send in writing to yourself in the future? And so really, there's an endless amount of ways you could use this to close a lesson, or even you could say, have students jot down some facts that they learned, and in a week, use that as review for a quiz when they get sent to their future self. So really, lots of ways, but they can use it, and definitely a fun and unique way to close a lesson. Okay. Third piece there is one word whip around. So this again is a quick way to close a lesson, but definitely something that's unique and fun. As a teacher, you would ask a question and students would go around and provide a one-word answer. So we're looking for something along the lines of, think about how you are feeling right now, after you've participated in this lesson, or decide on one word that sums up your learning for today. And students would quickly, one word only, go around the room and share that one word whip around. And you can always make sure your question is prepared in advance and aligned with your objective or your essential question. And you can even create a word cloud if you have the chance with these words that students are sharing. Okay, but it does a great job bringing all the voices into the room and allows the teacher to get a sense of the group in a really short amount of time. The last one here is called My Next Step. So this is where we're closing the engagement or closing the lesson for the day, and asking students to make a commitment to take immediate action on something tomorrow. So, but instead of saying, what did you learn today, or having students check things off of a list, we're asking them to think about what their next step would be in terms of their learning for tomorrow. And a lot of times students are more likely to do something if they write it down. Adults too. I know for me, if I jot something down, it will nag at my brain until I get that item done. So, my next step is just one way to, keep students moving forward, accelerating their learning and then their success in that way. Okay. A final piece of optimistic closures I wanted to share with you is called appreciation, apology, or AHA. So this is a quick 1-minute video. I love how this teacher uses this strategy to close out his lesson. And I'd like you to think about what you noticed about the teacher's actions during this optimistic closure. So while you're watching, if you notice anything about this teacher's actions, I'm going to ask just to see what you notice at the end. Take a look.
It's appreciation, apology, or aha.
The closing circle activity is called the 3 A's, appreciation, apologies, and ahas. So the whole purpose is just to have some space to reflect on our day.
All I want you to do is to stand around the room somewhere in a circle while we do our brief shout out.
People can either identify an appreciation they have, an apology they have, or an aha, a moment where there's like a light bulb moment in their head.
My aha was that race is not the only part of our identity. So can we get a few people to shout out an appreciation, apology, or aha?
I want to appreciate Jonathan. He helped me kind of figure out where I wanted to go with my personal statement.
I think those types of appreciations or community recognitions can go a long way to build the bonds. That's the whole point, right? Building community.
I apologize for having my headphones in half of the time to everyone.
Thanks a lot for that, Carlos. That means a lot.
Okay, so again, a quick strategy, but a great one. Students in a circle, sharing their appreciation, apology, or aha for the day, the AAA. So anybody notice something about the teacher that he did that was important in terms of this closure activity? Great. So I saw someone in the chat. Thank you for sharing that. That mentioned he started it out. He was the one who began the activity and told his own appreciation or aha. Actually, he used an aha. So he said his aha moment for the day and modeled what he was expecting students to, how he was expecting students to respond. So that's something that is absolutely vital. And we'll talk about that next, is really just making sure that you continue to improve your social emotional practice. So, he's engaging in this activity with his students, modeling it for them, giving them that piece of information about his aha. And that's so important when you're infusing social emotional learning in your classroom, to really partake in it yourself as well. So thank you. And absolutely a great and unique way to close a lesson. All right. So this strategy sheet I'm going to share with you here. Again, I'll be able to send this to you at the end of today, but this is a great tool to use when creating lesson plans or when time permits for you to include some extra SEL integration. So, in my experience, it would help to have something like this next to me as I'm creating my lesson plans, or maybe it's open in a tab in my browser. And as I'm working on my plans, I have my standards, I have my essential questions, I have my activities that I want to do, but I have here a list of vetted, excellent, welcoming activities that tap into social emotional learning. Anything you see linked, some of it I'm going to be sharing with you today. There's even more on here that I'm not able to get into that you could click on. It's available for free on our website to download. And we have lots on there if you want to take a look at it later. But again, I would say, okay, here, what kind of welcoming activity works well for me for this lesson? I'm going to pull from the sheet and plug it right in. And then I have some examples of engaging practice. Gallery walks, the fishbowl we talked about, give one, get one, move on, another great one. Here linked and to be able to print and download. Mindful breathing, things that are going to get our students' brains ready and set, grounded, and good to go for learning and engaging in our lesson. I have some pieces here for inclusion of student voice as you go through your lesson. So whether it be the think, pair, share with a twist, the clock buddies, I have accountable talk stems and rally table, another activity, and some questions and prompts that you can ask that tap into those social emotional learning skills as you're working with your students. Final piece here is the optimistic closure. So just as we went through, there are many things that we mentioned here, from future me to one word whip around, but it's all located in one central document that it sparks your mind to be able to say, okay, I need to make sure this lesson is not full of teacher talk. How can I implement some more student-centered practices, some social emotional learning pieces to keep that integration going? So this is a tool that would be great to use alongside your lesson plan. Any questions so far? All right. We're getting ready to wrap up with the last couple of pieces here. Hopefully, we discovered a lot of new resources that you'd like to try out, whether it be tomorrow or in the future. But as I said before, with building your own SEL practice, we can't expect our students to practice social emotional learning if we don't too. So having a strong SEL practice yourself as an adult, where we welcome diverse perspectives and we manage our own emotions and we're practicing compassion, all of those things, students can see it and they will know. They can recognize if we are masters of what we're teaching or not. It really also helps us become less reactive, and it strengthens our relationships with students. It can help develop our classroom management skills and our rapport. So really, there are, again, endless benefits to building your own SEL practice as an adult and as a teacher, as an educator. So I listed some questions for you here just to take a look at, because as I said earlier, research has confirmed that teachers who were mandated to teach SEL but didn't practice it themselves actually worsened students' SEL skills. I mean, it makes sense. But on the other side, teachers who develop their SEL skills not only improve their own wellness and their own well-being, it improved their students' academic learning and social emotional development as well. So we want to keep that in mind. And these questions, help us tap into our own thoughts through reflection. This is not something I'm saying you need to add to your list as far as doing more each day, but it could be something you journal about or talk about in a faculty meeting or in a PLC meeting, in a grade level meeting, or even just something that you think about on your ride home from work. Okay, so how will I practice self-management and be transparent about how I'm practicing it? That last question there. If you're feeling overwhelmed by students' behaviors or by actions that are being taken in the classroom, tell your class. Tell them how you're feeling. Say, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to take a deep breath. These are things that I'm doing to cope with what's going on here. And then we're going to reset and start over. Share those strategies that you're using to help yourself get through when it comes to social emotional, components. And when students see that being modeled, those are the things that they're going to take away from you as well. Okay. Our SEL integrated lesson plan template. So this is just a template for your reference. Of course, it is in no way, shape, or form something that I'm saying everyone needs to use this SEL integrated lesson plan template. No, but it is a great resource for yourself to organize your thoughts if you're really motivated on trying to make sure that SEL is in every lesson plan. This template allows you the planning space that you need to put your content area, information, standards, and what have you, along with your learning targets, and then how you're going to implement social emotional learning and infuse it into these lessons as well. So it gives you some great questions to think about those things, and examples of how you can have SEL connections if you'd like to try that. Now, if you're looking for something that is already created, we have lots of SEL integrated lesson plans on our website, math and ELA, already created and done, and including those pieces. So, please do go ahead and check them out at our website, in our resource section. But this is something that can be used to help you create your own. All right. And finally, planning for continued growth. How can we continue to develop this practice and accelerate success for ourselves and for our students? Sorry for my Wi-Fi. It's really just giving me a rough time today. So again, as I said, every career, every job opportunity, it involves growth and reflection. And, we have to plan for making ourselves better every day. We don't want to stay, the same over time because everything around us is changing. So we need to do the same. Okay. So my key advice to you is this: start small, build consistency, and reflect. As I said, there are a lot of things that I share with you today, lots of resources, lots of strategies, but you don't need to do all of this right away. You don't need to go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to put all of these things, every single one, into my lesson plan starting tomorrow. No, start small. Pick the ones that you like. Think about the ones that would work best for your students in your class, in your area that you're teaching, and start with those and see what works, right? If you find that you're really having a lot of success with a particular strategy, use it, build that consistency, start incorporating it more and more often and more frequently, and start implementing some new ones as you go. And really, again, just pick the ones that work best for your practice. And finally, that reflection piece, I'm sharing this resource here with you. It's an SEL assessment for teachers to use to see where their strengths are as far as using SEL in the classroom and where they might need to make some improvements. This is not something you need to do every week. I say once or twice a year. Take a look at this. If you really are committed to infusing SEL in your classroom and developing that practice, scan through the sheet and see what are we doing regularly sometimes, rarely, where do we stand? And then once you see what you do find in this rarely column, you can start to research a little bit, locate more information on that particular practice to help you develop where your practice could improve. Okay. So I know that making time for reflection can definitely be hard to do, but it's so worth it. And you should just consider asking your students for feedback too. I know that might be a scary thought, but you'd be surprised at what nuggets of wisdom they have. They are staring at you 6 hours a day. They're the ones that know your teaching practice the best. So ask them, where can I do better? And you might be surprised at what you'll learn. So really, if this type of practice shows that you're really prioritizing social emotional learning in your classroom. And, it really is a win-win for both teachers and students. We want to try to infuse and not add, right? So that it feels less like a burden and more like a lift on your daily teaching. Okay. So that's our reflection piece. So I appreciate your time. Thank you everybody so much for being here. So sorry about my internet issues that I was having. I'd like to hear if there's any questions you have. I'm going to share with you in the chat now, our feedback form. But please let me know if there's any questions. Feel free to shout them out now. All right, here we go. So if you can, before you head out, I just put into the chat for you an evaluation sheet. We'd love to hear your feedback. Please do share that with us if you can. And again, don't forget, if you would like to receive those resources, I can share each and every one with you. Just let me know in the evaluation sheet, the feedback form that you just received, and I can send those out to you as soon as possible. So my email address is here, odette.falone@inspired.instruction.com. If you have any questions, you can reach me there, or you can, head over to our website and check that out as well. All right, everyone. Thank you so much.